So, me and Phoenix were having philosophical discussions last night.
As you do.
As we do at midnight. Just before 2 a.m, Fee comes out and starts hitting out with the really weird stuff like, what if you could give birth to strawberries full of teeth, or whatever mad nonsense is cooking up in their head. I thought I had them this time with a mad thought. When I hit out with the question, how rare does a name have to be that no one with that name has ever shat themselves? Like, someone called Grace, there are going to be multiple people in the world called Grace who have shat themselves.
Okay, well, when do we define having shat themselves?
Yeah, this was going to be my question. Anyone with any names probably shat themselves.
That's where Fee one-upped me and like, pointed out that, like, we're all doomed. We've all, like, before we've even become self-aware, we are all people who have shat themselves.
It's original sin.
It is the original
shit.
The original shit.
I mean, look, if you were to give someone a name, like, right this moment that was, like, a keyboard smash of a name that no one's ever been given before, and they were born, like, 3 minutes ago, you might be okay. You might have found your winner there.
For 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's fucked.
If Harvey Makeshift is born, right, and we quickly, like, just take a photo while it's halfway out, just, right, something that ain't shit itself, with a unique name. And then, yeah, a couple minutes later, oh, fine. Our dreams are now on the floor. That brings up a whole host of other philosophical, and let's face it, moral questions. Do you consider a baby pooing in a diaper as having shit itself?
Oh, yeah. 1,000%.
Yeah? Because...
Yeah.
If a nappy / diaper is essentially a sort of portable toilet. They are using it for its intended purpose.
Oh, no, yeah, they're using it for its intended purpose, but its intended purpose is clothing that you're shitting yourself in.
It's a container for consequence-free, well, for you, not so much your parents, pants shitting. But then there's that question. The difference between shitting yourself and shitting your pants.
Well, there's also, like, they were using their ass for its intended purpose, too.
That's
that
true.
doesn't change the fact that they've shit themselves.
That's true. No, that is true. Like, I'm glad this is why we've got outside help on this. Just so that we can cover all the bases in shit. So, okay, we've decided now that babies do shit themselves, and they should be ashamed of that. Let's not. If we're ashamed as adults for shitting ourselves, then they should be shamed and pointed at and cajoled and criticised.
Should we be ashamed of ourselves for shitting ourselves?
Yeah, I'm on Team Comrade here. I think the solution isn't to shame people who are shitting themselves, but to go the other way and go,
to celebrate.
Maybe.
This is why I need external opinions, because there is no scenario for me in any situation that doesn't end in shame. I operate on a shame-based philosophical system.
So do I, but I'll put it this way. If I were to accidentally shit myself in a social situation, I'd be, like, absolutely terrified. This is the end of me. My social reputation is ruined. If someone were to look at me and go, hey, shit your pants, congrats, I feel like that would take some of the terror out of the situation.
I think so, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I did. Well done to me.
Taking ownership as well is quite important. I mean, CM Punk, the wrestler, once did shit himself live on television on an episode of SmackDown, and afterwards just tweeted, shit me britches on SmackDown, ask me anything. And at that point, he has taken complete ownership, and he now, like when Darkside Phil was accidentally live-streamed himself wanking, so long as you commit to what you did enough, no one can really shame you for it.
The one time I shit myself as an adult, I talked about on Podquisition. It's out there, I owned it. I rode that situation out. I was like, hey, shame? Fuck that. It's content now. Fuck yeah.
And, the multiple times I've shat myself while recording this podcast, I've kept to myself shamefully in the dark.
Another factor to consider in all of this, because we've been so focused on babies shitting themselves, but we have to remember that eventually, on a long enough timeline, we're all gonna shit ourselves. From shit we came to shit we return.
This is why I'm saying don't shame the shitters, because that was us and it will be us if we're not shitting ourselves right now. That is a temporary state of being at best. Don't put shame where you wouldn't want it thrown at you in a couple decades.
Live in the moment. Enjoy the fact that you are not shitting yourself right now. You're getting this reprieve.
But at any time it could return, yeah.
And at any time you could just shit yourself. As an, not, at ages where it's expected. But anyone laughing at someone who shit their pants could just as easily have an accident in the next hour. We're all dancing on a tightrope here. We are playing with loaded dice, and the dice are loaded with poo. So that's just something to think about, listeners, when you're alone. When this podcast is over, don't worry, I'll remind you all at the end. You'll be fine, I'll have forgotten by then. But, once our voices have gone and you're left alone in your stinking dwellings, just have a think about that. Just have a think about tomorrow, anything could happen to make you shit yourself in public, and then stay indoors. Never go out. Never go out.
Welcome to Podquisition,
welcome,
everyone.
Welcome.
We sometimes talk about video games here every now and then.
It's been known.
Which are also shit.
Yeah, all of them, every single one. And no, the Droogs in Space Jam 2, gamers, is not the same as Pepe Le Pew existing. You fools.
Wow.
Sorry, people are just so precious about the crossovers that they will get sick of, and I will laugh at that one day, that they're hitting out with all sorts of wild shit. I still don't think anything I've said is wrong when I say it's fucked up that Bugs Bunny and Game of Thrones are mashed together, and there are some implications there that if we care about artistic context, we should think about.
You're supposed to laugh at Pepe Le Pew. Whether that's right or wrong, you're supposed to laugh at Pepe Le Pew. The context for Alex and the Droogs is very different.
Yes. More to the point, they don't show Pepe Le Pew anymore. Originally, I think because of the French, stereotype. But I think even beyond the stereotypes, they don't show sexual harassment, sexual assault, all of that stuff. Because that's not what they show in cartoons, especially sanitized media. And that's the problem. Because media is so sanitized now, that we need to remember what the Droogs are, that we need to remember the universe Arya Stark belongs to, because everything's getting sanitized. And I don't know. Obviously, if you've not watched this Monday's Jimquisition, then you won't know what we're talking about. But one assumes you have, but we're talking about, the shameless crossovers that have happened, mostly thanks to Warner Brothers, and people have fought me tooth and nail on it because they like multiverses, and they like being hyped for trailers, and they like going, oh, look, there's the grim adventures of Bulk and Skull, or whatever, in the background of a cartoon. Oh my god, I never thought I'd see him again. Don't worry, anyone who disagrees with my views on the ruinous cash-in crossover craze, you will agree with me in time. Disagreement is a temporary condition, and it will pass. Warner Brothers will make sure of it and drive you into my arms.
Much like not shitting yourself, disagreeing with Steph is a temporary condition.
Yes. To that shit we will return.
I played some video games this week, and they weren't shit, weirdly enough.
What?
I played some good video games.
I know one you played. I'm assuming it's the one you want to kick off with.
Yeah, shall I kick off with the one that you talked about last week? And I'd dip my toes in, but I've finished now.
Yeah, we spoke a little about it the other day, and I can't wait for this, but please.
Okay, I finished Indika, which we talked about Indika last week. It is 4, maybe 5 hours long. It is that game about being a nun in slightly alternate reality, early 1900s Russia, going on a road trip to deliver a letter, and Satan's bumbling about in your head trying to get you to have a little religious doubt.
Z-Man Zilla, co-editor on the Jimquisition, hit out with, I think, the perfect description of sort of the general plot between the two main characters. It's a story about a criminal who hears God and a nun who hears the devil. As a succinct sort of elevator pitch, I think, is a great way of getting you to think about what this game is.
100%. And having finished it, I understand your level of praise for this game and very much agree with it. I think this game is absolutely fucking fascinating, and a game I am going to be thinking about for a long, long time. Without wanting to, like, spoil too much of, like, the specifics, because it is largely a game about walking and having conversations. As someone who had a very specific experience with Christianity that was largely held up by being within the context of a church, and that was very much rooted in experiences of being told you couldn't ask certain questions because asking them was a demonstration of a lack of faith, and the very fact you were asking the questions was a sign that your faith was not strong enough to not be asking the questions, and that sort of coinciding with a little tiny catalyst for questioning, asking myself questions about my religious belief. This game 100% captured, like, me ages 15 through 17 going through my journey of what is my relationship to religion. It's not a game that feels explicitly pro or anti-Christianity. It is just a game that goes, hey, here are questions.
That's it.
And
it's
questions,
pro-question.
Yeah.
It's pro-challenging your beliefs, whether you arrive at the same conclusion or not.
Indeed. And it's like, I played this game on stream, and I was pausing every 5 fucking minutes to have conversations with chat about, like, as someone that, like, at one point I genuinely thought the direction my life might be going would be to, like, study theology and end up being, like, a youth pastor or something. One of the things that fascinates me about other religions compared to Christianity, at least as I experienced it, was the first time that a discussion happened about, like, hey, if a Muslim person goes to the International Space Station, how will they handle praying towards Mecca? The response within that religion is that, like, a group of religious leaders came together to debate and discuss, hey, this is not explained in our religious text. How do we interpret this? What do we think consensus should be, and what are the arguments for and against? And you see the same in, say, Judaism. You see debates about, like, something new has come into the world. How do we feel that this aligns with the religious doctrine that was written before these things entered the world? Christianity feels like it doesn't have that same curiosity about sitting and debating answers to hard questions.
And given what some of them get up to in the Deep South, there needs to be an update of we need about 52 new commandments, and don't get me started on the deadly sins.
But again, like, the questions that Indika raises are, I think, questions that there are answers you could give that for some people would be satisfying answers within religious text to those questions. They're not questions that would be impossible for a Christian to come to a logically consistent with their beliefs answer to, but they're questions that if you are on your own and you are not in a position to be able to openly talk those questions through without it being seen as a sign of lacking faith, those questions are going to eat at you, and they are probably not going to do your faith any favours in a vacuum.
You'll start seeing dancing man babies crawling out of nuns' mouths.
Right.
That was my takeaway from the whole game, was if you don't get if you don't ask enough questions and you fill too many buckets with water, an old baby will dance out of a nun. Ally McBeal tried to warn us this as well, but we never listened.
One of my favourite things I've not seen many people talking about with this game that I want to, in vague terms, get at is I really like the way this game uses slightly jarring video game elements to a very effective narrative point. I'll say this because this is evident right at the start of the game. There is a level up system that is basically do good Christian activities, regardless of, like, whether there's an actual positive net outcome, just things that are seen to be good activities for a Christian to be doing, and you get little floating 3D pixel voxel, like, good Christian points to level up your good Christian skills. You know, go fill up your bucket of water 10 times, maybe you can level up to level 9 guilt now.
I love that as well, like, the quote-unquote skills. It is just guilt, penance, shame, like, just do superficially Christian things while feeling really bad.
Yes, and the way that level up bar that is constantly in the upper left, the way it is used throughout the game to be indicative of certain changes based on character behavior and the ways it is tied into the way that game plays out at the end, I think are really, really good narrative tools.
Yeah. It's one of those beautiful things where they've used the medium of games to tell a story in a way that could only be told in that medium.
Yeah. It's a little bit of silly juxtaposition in a quite straight-laced game, and then at the end it all comes together and you go, I see exactly why you've had this lingering here the whole time.
Yeah. In many games, collecting points to be told they're pointless, I would shrug off as pretentious nonsense by a game trying to do art and not really knowing what it's talking about. But sometimes you get a game that fucking earns it, that shows it's doing it to actually serve its purpose, not to be disruptive for disruption's sake.
Yes, and on a similar point to that, one of my favourite things this game does that I think it lands really well is there is a segment in this game involving holding a button down to engage in prayer, and if you let go of that button, other intrusive thoughts start happening, and oh my goodness, I have never in my life seen a better depiction of the I'm trying to pray away the thoughts I'm not meant to be having right now as an active, conscious act of trying to override thoughts that I don't think God wants me to be having. Absolutely, there's so many things that this game really captures very well. It's a little janky in places, it's little bits of wonkiness, but it is a fucking special game.
Yeah. I'm really glad you saw it too, and you know, my review certainly got a lot of sort of people to check it out, and so far, aside from one person who replied to my review with, it's not 10 out of 10, it's linear and it's got no replay value, and I'm like, are we still in 2010? That's how we determine what a good game is? I need to do a video on linearity again, or am I fucking...
Can't have a 10 out of 10 game if you only get a phenomenal, life-changing experience out of it once.
Yeah. If there's no New Game Plus, no sale. No, that game has replayability, in that it's so fucking good and tells such a good story, it's worth playing again.
That being said, they could have done a New Game Plus, and I can think of how they could have done it, it would have been kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, Indika's pretty damn special. It's not going to be for everyone, but there is something pretty unique there.
Yeah. I maintain it is one of the best written games I've ever played. It is one of the best games I've ever played, and it deserves to be counted among some of the most historical indie games, and games in general, because no mainstream game I've ever played has had the nerve that game has.
Yeah. What about you both? Either of you played anything this week you want to chat about?
I played a game called Moving Out 2. It is a sequel to a game called Moving Out. It's a game where you're movers. And you move things.
I never played it, but I have... Y'all played it back in the day, didn't you? We've talked about it on this show, maybe?
I don't recall playing it before.
Oh, maybe then.
I think I might have played the first Moving Out at some point.
Yeah,
I think it was 8 years ago that it came out or something. So.
Oh, okay.
I might have talked about the original early on this show, possibly.
Possibly, yeah.
The game's really familiar, and I've definitely... I'm thinking going, I know exactly what that game is like. Did I watch a trailer or did I play it? Who the fuck knows? I got bad memory.
Well, and it is so many of that game when you look at it, because it's got a little bit of a physics element to it, and it's designed for cooperative multiplayer play, and like a bit of a party atmosphere where it's challenging, but you don't have to take it so seriously, and it's a goofy little time. You are presented with a house. You are shown a group of things that need to be put onto your truck. You run over to them, and with the trigger, you can grab, and you hold it while you grab, and then you can drag things around. If they're light enough, you can carry them and even throw them. When working with another player, large objects can be swung and thrown. You have to sort of work together and time it. And that element... I'm playing it a little bit single player now, because the way the progression of the game's levels work, you finish levels and you have to do that within a certain amount of time, but they all have bonus objectives in them. You don't find out what the bonus objectives are until you've completed the level the first time. And then you go back and do them. And if you've done the objective in the process of playing it that first time, it completes it for you, which is nice. It's not making you go back and repeat shit, and it's kind of fun to discover, oh, I did that thing. But those optional objectives are what affect your fart level, because this game has a incredibly puerile base sense of humor that I adore. Fart is an acronym relating to moving stuff, but it's your fart level.
I mean, either way, it's a reference to moving stuff.
Exactly. Right. Yes. Yes, it is. So if you want to raise that level and get access to more homes and stages in which to move stuff, you have to go back and get those optional objectives clear.
I'd love to have access to homes and manage his fart levels.
And then there's some variations on the play as well. Sometimes you have to move things in, which is, there's a bunch of items in your truck and there are outlines indicating where items go and you have to drag them there. It does a very good job of visual representation and highlighting and conveying information to the player about what they have and where they need to go with it at all times, which is nice. It has some accessibility elements to it. One thing I struggled with, because I was playing this with Linda on the stream yesterday, and we were both doing this, is we were looking at the wrong character on screen and thinking it was us. And part of that is Linda was playing a character that had a sneaker for a head that was red, and I was in the second player position, and that color gets designated red, so my character's outfit was also red. And that was a bit of a thing. But if I just looked at our feet, they have differing shape and color indicators for each character. There's one of them was a blue square, one of them was a red circle to help with viewing visually impaired people to identify things more clearly. I thought that was a nice subtle touch that, had I been paying attention, could have utilized also. On the whole, it's fun, it's light, the stages have a lot of variety. It's fun that it doesn't really give a shit how you do stuff in a lot of cases. Like, there will be fragile items that you shouldn't throw unless you can team up with someone else to catch them and put them on the truck, which that dynamic works well. The ways in which you can take multiple players and coordinate to quickly accomplish tasks is very satisfying. But there's a playfulness to just... I'm going to jump through this window to create a faster access point to throw items into a truck and not give a shit. There's a callousness that you can apply towards your moving of other people's property that is somewhat enjoyable. And in general, the game has a good sense of humor about work and labor and farts. So... yeah, it's a fun little low pressure game. It's on Game Pass right now if you want to check it out and you have that. But playful, good for multiple players. A little less fun in single player, but it does at least compensate for the difficulty. There are, in multiplayer, moving a large object like a bed is a lot like real life. You could drag it somewhere very slowly on your own, but really you're meant to have someone help you carry it. But that, in single player not being an option, they just make it lighter, which is nice. Yeah. Good game. Well balanced. A lot of fun. I'm still in relatively early stages of it, but it operates like a group of hub worlds with a variety of stages, some locked by your fart level. And you sort of cruise around in a vehicle and check them out and move shit and move on to the next one. It's light and fun, and yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Steph? What you been playing this week?
I've only had time for one, which is a shame because I was hoping to play Lunacid before we got on, but I literally just got past character creation and it was 2:00. But Lunacid is a game. It's been out for a while, but it's by the Kira who did Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion. Because I was watching some videos on an itch game called Basilisk, which was one of theirs, which is one of those meta things that supposes it was an unfinished old game, and you piece together the sort of scary story about its development with dev notes and going into like toolkits and stuff. Fascinating stuff. Apparently Lunacid is sort of a Dark Souls-y inspired game that has some of those meta elements. So that's something I will hopefully be able to talk about next week. But this week I have really just been playing Hellblade 2, which I did power through. After we recorded last week, where I talked about my issues with it, I pushed my way through them, and it's still difficult with the voices. It's still something about it. Maybe it's my own sort of sensitivity to stuff being a little heightened these days when it comes to certain mental health things, that I just find it a bit tougher to deal with than the first game. But it's worth it. It's worth any snarls I'm having. I'm glad I powered through it.
I'm glad you're having a positive time for having powered through it, because I know I kind of tried to sell you a little bit on that it was doing something special beyond that, and I'm glad that you're seeing some of what I saw in it.
Yeah, I've still got to finish it, but I'm quite a ways in. It is, in terms of the overall package, like, I think I still prefer some of the elements of combat in the first, but in terms of overall presentation package and some of the elements of combat, the jump in quality from Senua's Sacrifice, which was already a good game, the presentation, the camera work, is something special. The themes that we've talked about before, about trying to be a hero, trying to save everyone, and all of that, really poignant stuff. I love that there are NPCs. Like, they're not massively present, but they're always welcome when you see them. They provide a great deal of relief from all of the internal conflict. Having these external anchor points, I think, really heighten Senua's alone moments. I forget his name, but the sort of the older fella who's sort of the guy who fills Senua in on what's going on and stuff. I really like him. He's such a welcome face at the end of like a harrowing sequence. There's just something so calm about him, from sort of the way he's performed and the way he moves.
It's really nice to come back from a solo bit and meet back up with him and to just go, I know that this guy is gonna get it. Like, he doesn't have to say it out loud, but it's clear that he gets, I've got something going on in my head, and that he's not going, you're evil, he's not saying you're magic, he's just going, look, you see things a bit differently. Sometimes that's really helpful. I get this a struggle for you. Let's walk together. And I'm like, fuck yeah. That's what you need to be.
It's a good counterpart to the first game, to show that other side of it, to show how positive it can be for someone who's struggling with mental illness to have someone who gets it on some degree. And can get it without any sort of judgment, especially when so many people will tell you that you're evil and you're fucked up. The presence of NPCs, because he's not the only one. There's a couple others. The presence of them gives it a very different tone and a very excellent counterpart tone to the first one. So I really like that.
One thing I really like that it does that, like, it only really clicked to me literally this week was, I really like that by having those NPCs, it gives an opportunity for Senua to actively, with her actions, contradict what the voices are saying. It gives an opportunity for, like, the voices to be like, you're going to act like this, or this is sort of who you are, and for her to have an external way to act against that, and to go, no, just because you're in my head saying that doesn't mean that's how I've got to be. And I think that really helps.
I think so. It's a good way of showing that they're not just narrators, and they're not just a video game device.
Yeah.
It contributes to that realistic portrayal of psychosis and sort of other mental illnesses, in that, no, people aren't just sort of blindly obeying the voices in their head, you know? And it's a really good way of showing that without just looking at the camera and telling the audience that that's what's happening. The benefit of characters for Senua to play off can't be overstated, really. It's such a valuable thing. And I think the importance of having non-player characters in games and how to use them to tell a story. Yeah, Hellblade 2 does a lot to sort of showcase that, how to use NPCs to really enhance the protagonist. Not got enough good things to say about the characters. The story as well, like the sequence where you... basically anything involving the giants.
Yeah.
Both incredibly poignant at parts and also impeccably horrifying.
Yeah.
It's like they watched Attack on Titan and thought, how can we make that even creepier? And pulled it off. But at the same time, you know, as you play through the game, you get more out of those characters than just scary, than just creepy. It's, again, beautifully done.
Yeah, the juxtaposition between how someone who has, in the past, been viewed as monstrous, dealing with big scary monsters, creates some really good narrative space to play in.
Yes, that ability to relate to someone or something that is in some way monstrous, without condoning anything it might have done, you know.
Yes.
But to understand what drives it is the best way to defeat it. And that itself is a very important part of dealing with mental illness. You know, I've talked before to people about when I got my diagnosis of bipolar disorder, where for my entire life before then, I just thought I was broken. Because I had, you know, a fucking NHS therapist once just sit me down and say, you're not even depressed. You just need to go outside a bit more, you know, just go through a wall, through your mental health, touch grass, that kind of thing. And I was sent on my way and then spent the next, 10, 15 years of my life just thinking I was a fuck up. And the moment I was told, not only are you not fucked up, but here's what it is, I felt so much better. The same with the ADHD and all the other stuff. Once there's a name to it, it exists, it is tangible, and it can therefore be dealt with.
Knowing something's true name is very powerful, and it is a real good tool in being able to combat it.
Yeah, like, it's not just a phrase, knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
When it comes to mental health, knowing really is probably the hardest part of the fight sometimes. Not just to be believed, but to work, find out for yourself the name of the thing that's hurting you.
It's part of why I've always been drawn to folklore stories of, your sort of Rumpelstiltskin type things, where it's you have to find out the name of the thing to defeat the thing. Because it feels so accurate to so many things around, say, mental health, is just knowing a thing's name makes it so much easier to work out how to win against it.
Yeah. And that really is all it comes down to, is making it real, making it tangible. And that's something that comes up with the monsters Senua faces, is until she works out, what these things are, the game spends its whole time reinforcing that it can't be beat, it can't be touched, you can't do anything. And then you find out, no, it's tangible. To quote another sort of deeply resonant sort of philosophical human story, Predator, if it bleeds we can kill it,
right?
You know, that is it. If it's here, if it's tangible, if it's something we know, if there's something about it we can recognize, that's the start of fighting it. And that's something I really love about this game, on top of the fact it just looks fucking gorgeous. It just looks fucking beautiful. I love the landscapes they've got, a lot of sort of rain slick rocky mountains and outcrops and hills. There's a term I've used for things like Dark Souls, beautifully bleak, where it is grey and miserable, but there is something breathtaking about it at the same time.
Yeah.
The area I'm at is sort of along the waterfront, along the beach, and you're overlooking it in the hills that are grassy and really rocky, and it's raining and the sky's grey, and it's beautiful. It's exactly my kind of atmosphere, to stand out in light rain with a grey sky, looking over just a beautiful, untouched landscape. That's one of the most beautiful things in the world to me. And they nail it. Like, I have, like, stopped to just, like, look across the outcroppings and stuff. Just because it's really nice.
Yeah.
An interesting thing is their photo mode lets you stop anywhere, to the point where even some cutscenes let you move the camera, which is great because I've been watching things like Boundary Break a lot recently, sort of, you know, finding out the little tricks of where they hide things or what they do, what's off camera to make a game, you know, work.
Yeah.
And you actually get to see that quite a bit if you're like me and you're like getting a lot of screenshots for stuff. So, you know, there's a moment where Senua's got her sword and she's like swinging at the giant. And I was like, oh, that's a good action shot. I'll get that. And I went into photo mode and the game had moved her like 5 feet off the ground because the camera from behind doesn't show that. But it just gets her close to where she needs to be in relation to the giant.
I love that it doesn't hide that shit.
No.
It's like, yeah, no, this is what's going on right now. Go.
Yeah, I mean, why not be that confident about it when the game looks so fucking good? No one's going to say, I went into photo mode and she was off the ground. What an ugly game.
I also love for the photo mode that you can do stuff like move where the light source is. Because it's all, like, actual dynamic lighting, you can move the light source around to get it better lit for your screenshot. And I'm like, oh, give me more of that.
Yeah, it's a really nice one. As someone who, you know, takes a lot of screenshots, having a good photo mode is one of my favourite things in modern games. And some of them are so bad still. Like, the one for Dragon's Dogma 2. The controls are alien and it's so limited. And then you get something like Rise of Ronin, which lets you tap a button to move the game forward frame by frame to get the perfect shot. And then you get, you know, Hellblade 2 with the movable lighting and gorgeous controls. Like some of the best photo mode controls, because they're so smooth and responsive and they make sense. The only issue with having such great facial animation, though, is very much like myself when I pause a Jimquisition video to get a screen grab. Her face can look really stupid. And it's not an attack on the game, because if you're using facial capture, anyone who's edited their own videos for YouTube or whatever can tell you that there is a 50-50 shot. You press pause and you're gonna look like a knobhead. So I do have potentially for whatever I've called them, snap time, where I show the sort of my discarded screenshots. I've got quite a few where it looks like she's just gonna burst into tears, but like in a really childish lip quivery way. But yeah, other than that, there's not a lot in terms of criticism, I would say even though they're greatly reduced, which is fantastic, I still don't like the puzzles really in the game. I know it's half of the experience, but
I don't disagree on that.
Yeah, they just feel like an unnecessary barrier between me and the bits of the game I want. Almost like a concession to the medium, where it's like, oh, we've got to put in some video gamey shit, you know?
I'm glad that they're less frequent, more varied, and easier to find the solution to, so less of a like time-based roadblock.
Yes.
While still going, if you took all of these out, I really wouldn't mind.
Yeah, pretty much in the same boat. It is miles better than the first one, which I will never replay the first one just because of the puzzles. I can't be asked to go through those really slow, long, boring, repetitive environment matchy puzzles. And the matchy puzzles that are in Hellblade 2 are, as you say, like a lot quicker to work out. There's a lot less like pixel bitching to try and find everything.
Yeah. They sometimes paint part of the thing red so you can go like, oh, that's the angle I meant to see that from.
Yes. And it makes it a lot clearer when you're in the right place. So you know it's now just a matter of moving the camera rather than moving yourself. So they knew there was a problem, at least.
Yeah.
If they do a Hellblade 3, just take them out entirely, gang. Just pop them out. No one's going to cry about it. No one's going to miss it. But yeah, that's my experience with Hellblade 2. Still got to play through some of it, but I am really glad I powered through.
I'm glad that powering through was worth it.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I played one other thing I want to talk about that is a very silly little game that's maybe 2.5 hours long, and is one of my favourite silly little things I've played in a while. I played Duck Detective: The Salami Bandit.
You had me at Salami.
Yeah. So this is a sort of Paper Mario aesthetic detective game where you play a middle-aged, divorced duck detective with a bit of a bread habit, but if his ex calls up, he will swear he hasn't had a crumb in months, going to solve what initially is presented as a very simple mystery. There's an office that's like a bus station office where they handle all the incoming and outgoing buses for the area, and someone stole some lunch out of the work fridge. Over the course of a couple of hours, that spirals into a considerably more elaborate mystery. So, things I like about this: fully voice acted, and they've done a great job with the voice cast. Some really fun voice selections. One of the characters is voiced by Brian David Gilbert, who does a great job of being an anxious, nervous crocodile man. But there's a lot of stuff in there that really helps to keep the mystery moving at a good pace. The main mechanic is that you are going around asking questions to get keywords that you can plug into a sort of fill in the gaps each stage of the mystery. But it does a lot of stuff to avoid wasting your time. It's all set in this little office building, and it's largely one central office room and like 3 or 4 rooms off to the side of it. And if you're ever unsure, like, have I found all the clues I need right now, or is there a clue somewhere I haven't got, you can pause and look at the map, and there will be an exclamation mark on any rooms where there's still stuff to find. Anytime you try and interact with a character and you want to like discuss a clue with them, to save you from having to do the point-and-click adventure game thing of try every object on every person, it will only show you a very small selection of things to ask them about. Like, hey, if these things they're going to have nothing of value to say about, which is not even going to bother showing you them as a thing you could ask them about, to sort of minimize the number of prompts you're doing per person. I'm like, cool, that's good. If you are still stuck, there is like a nice little ponder mechanic where you can get the duck detective to just sit and have a think out loud about the mystery, about certain aspects of it, to nudge you in, like, the right direction for a certain aspect. And when you're doing, like, the fill-in-the-gaps mystery element, let's say there's, like, 8 gaps in a little segment of the mystery you're trying to fill out. Fill in all the gaps, and then it'll be like, are there more than 3 things wrong? Exactly 3 things wrong, or fewer than 3 things wrong in the answers you filled out. So if you can use that to sort of get a sense of, okay, if I can get it to exactly 3 things wrong, I can then sort of use that to test, does this make the number go up or down? Like, okay, that's correct, I can sort of know that's right. To sort of wiggle your way through if you're a little stuck on solving something. I also appreciate that the keywords are all color-coded, so, like, you're not selecting to put in a gap from literally every word you found as a keyword. It's like, no, it's going to be one of this batch of similar sort of words that's going in here. All of which do a lot to keep this mystery going at a really good pace, where it's not getting ahead of itself and, like, spoiling the surprise before you get there. But if you are having trouble, there's a lot of tools to help you get back on track. It is a very silly, charming, weirdly elaborate little puzzle exploration-y game. I had a lot of fun with it. It's good if you're in the mood for, like, I want something that is story-based and a little bit silly and a little dramatic, and I can be done with it in under 3 hours. I would very much be interested if they made more games in this series. I would check them out. Very impressed with this one.
Excellent, yeah. I've been meaning to get back into, like, playing some of the shorter, like, stuff like that, like, especially not even having the time lately to get through Hellblade. A little 2-hour thing sounds good, especially if Salami's involved.
Salami is involved. Salami is a central aspect. There's a lot of big fancy meaty salamis around.
Oh,
and,
I want a sausage now.
You gotta really pay attention to those big old sausages.
Like, I was thinking about cocks, but obviously, long, meaty meat, ha. But now I have just started thinking about real sausages. It's the two extremes of my life. I'm either thinking about cock or sausage, and that's going to be a game show, cock or sausage, where you just ask me what I'm thinking about at the moment. I'll be like, cock, now sausage, back to cock. That would be it for 30 minutes. Netflix is optioning it.
I did play one other thing this week, and I don't have a lot to say about it, but I think it's just really interesting, and I want to point people to the fact it exists before it gets taken down and people can't access it anymore. You know Mario Maker, the sort of 2D Mario level creation tool? Someone made a 3D version of that for making Mario 64 levels that works on actual N64 hardware. It is a ROM hack for Mario 64. You plug an existing Mario 64 ROM that you've somewhere acquired into it, and it does a little bit of weird wizardry, and it chucks you out a toolkit for making shareable Mario 64 levels that you make using like a very simple visual level editor that you can then export and create new Mario 64 levels that other people can play on their N64.
Of course someone got to Mario Maker 64 before Nintendo did.
Of course they did. Of course they did. I've been playing around with it. It is surprisingly intuitive. The big thing I will say about it is there is a community of people who are making their own levels and sharing them, and there's some really cool stuff being made. But it's very clear a lot of people are using emulators to run this development tool and make the levels and test the levels. Because a lot of these levels, if you try and run them on actual N64 hardware, the frame rate kind of shits the bed. Like, they're clearly relying on the power of an N64 emulator to get some of these levels to run at a decent pace. But I think most people who are playing these levels will be playing them on an emulator, so not the biggest deal in the world. But it's a really interesting little tool, and one that I hugely suspect Nintendo will strike the fuck down, like, pretty quick. So they at least did the thing of they didn't announce they were making it until it was ready and out there in the world, so it's going to be a little hard to put the genie back in the bottle now. But if that sounds interesting, go check it out now before it becomes a bit harder to find. So yeah, that's everything I've played this week, and there's not really any news this week, because all of the people are keeping their news held up because it's video game announcement week starts next week, so...
Yeah, the only thing I found, I just found it, was Sony removing an interview with Neil Druckmann at Naughty Dog.
Oh, yes.
They apparently just lied about everything he said.
Yeah, so there was a bunch of quotes going around last week from an interview with Neil Druckmann that, like, were quotes that kind of made him sound pretty fucking pretentious. There was one that seemed to suggest that he was like, the next thing Naughty Dog makes will change forever the entire landscape of video games as an industry, and some quotes about AI that weren't particularly great. And according to him, those quotes are just complete wholesale fabrications, and Sony seems to, at least to some degree, agree, because they've pulled the interview down, citing that there's shit in there that just isn't stuff he said.
Yeah, they've, it seems like they were using him to just produce more pro-AI propaganda, like we need more of that. Made it sound like he was talking about AI when he wasn't. I've not seen the original interview because Sony's taken it down and apologised. It was that bad. But yeah, like, terrifying that companies will do that. They will just put words in your mouth. Very similar to what they want to do with AI, actually, you know? Like, just make anyone say anything. Fucking horrifying.
Yeah, so the one of the original quotes was, I'm eager to see how this new game resonates, especially following the success of The Last of Us, as it could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. Druckmann responded, "This is not quite what I said. In editing my rambling answers, in a recent interview with Sony, some of my words, context, and intent were unfortunately lost." And then he did share his transcript of what was actually said, and it's like, yeah, that's not... Yeah, they kind of tried to truncate you and sort of invented a new point that you didn't really say.
I'd like to think that was an accident. I don't. But I would like to think that it was.
I'm trying to imagine how you do that accidentally. Because, like, let's say this was for print, and you're like, okay, we've got to get it down to word count or reword a thing so that it fits, and then we'll double check it with the person to check that it still reflects what they said, and then they forget to double check it. And, like, maybe the PlayStation blog has, like, strict things about what their word count internally they want that to be, and maybe they just forgot to do a double check.
As I understand it, PlayStation blog does have some sort of weird, like, requirements, or at least they did at one time, so that's not impossible.
Journalistic standards, of course, not one of the requirements.
No.
Not at all.
Well, PlayStation blog is either Sony people talking about themselves or other game developers talking about their own products.
Yeah.
That it is a marketing channel.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I make a joke. I don't expect journalism from Sony blog any more than I do off of Jeff Keighley. Like, they have their role as a PR facilitator. Yes. I get that.
Yes.
But to make up the PR, to bring nothing but bad PR on yourself because you tried to make PR up, like, bit of an own goal, really.
Yeah.
Little bit. It's not the best of looks.
It does prove my constant point that these pro AI people can't do anything without being duplicitous in some way. It's everything to do with AI. There's, like, lying for the sake of it sometimes. They can't convince a skeptic that it's not dodgy because they're incapable of non-dodgy behaviour, and it amazes me how bold-faced they are with it constantly. AI is a bad, terrifying thing.
That it is. So yeah, I think that's it. I think we done it.
Yeah.
It's a nice tight one this week.
Breezy wheezy, lemon squeezy this time.
Yeah.
Which works for me. I'm going to go back to try that Loon Acid. I'm genuinely quite excited about it. Talking of exciting things, Laura, you've always got some of those in the works. If you could illuminate us.
I got some of those things going on at the moment. The day that this episode goes up, there will be a new episode of Control Alt Access going up, which is the video podcast that I do talking about accessibility in video games with my lovely co-host Arevia. I'm really excited for this episode to go out because it features a bunch of discussion of the Proteus accessibility controller, which some of you will know as that one that's made of a bunch of cubes you click together. Super interested for people to hear the lengthy discussion we have about that. But the big one is Friday, June 7th. That's next week at 4 p.m. UK, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. If you go to Twitch or YouTube, Laura K. Buzz, you can watch the Accessibility Summer Showcase, which a version of that has been exported. It's done. It's watchable now.
Yeah.
Tune in for 45 minutes of trailers, announcements, etc. for accessible video games, talking about their accessibility settings and features up front. So, hey, if a game looks cool, you'll know whether it's going to be playable for you up front. I can now give some specifics about the showcase. We've got 20 games this year, 10 of which are playable without sighted assistance, which is 50% of the showcase, which I'm really excited about. We're going to have a Steam sale page, I can now say. We got approval from Valve to have a little page up on Steam for a week where you will be able to find all the games and all the demos and all the things in one place, sorted by common categories of disability. So you can go, hey, I need games that I can play that aren't going to require audio or that have cognitive accessibility features or increased legibility of text. You can scroll down and find that segment and see which games from the showcase that applies to. Look forward to all of that alongside American Sign Language, British Sign Language, and audio-described versions of the showcase. The audio description ones being voiced by Sightless Combat this year. All of that's up on June 7th, 4 p.m. UK. Please check it out. I've been working really hard on this, and I am super proud of how it's coming together. What about you, Conrad? Where are you found on the internet?
I am found at Conrad Zimmerman on Instagram and Blue Sky. You can hang out with me on Twitch Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. You can listen to me talk about snacks on Let's Talk About Snacks. That's a podcast where I talk about snacks, and you can get it wherever podcasts are. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda that I make at mercenarycreative.com, along with Jimquisition merchandise, and everything I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And you know who else has a Patreon? Stephanie Sterling.
That is correct. Patreon.com/Jimquisition, which supports this podcast and the weekly show and the website. Do check out this week's Jimquisition. It's one of the good ones. Contentious, but good. The ultimate showdown of ultimately ruinous crossover cash-ins. Got a song on it that Zilla and I co-wrote together this time. Really proud of that. Do check out thejimquisition.com. We got reviews going up on there as often as I can pump them out. My next wrestling date is June 8th. So once you're done watching Laura's Accessibility Showcase, you can poddle on down to Blackpool, where I will be performing with PCW at Pride of the Ring 3, making my third annual appearance at the third annual Pride of the Ring show. That will be hosted by PCW, so look up PCW UK on social media for info about that. I think they're still at buytickets.at/PCW for the tickets. So that's June 8th. For that, I will also be... I know I've got a date in earlier July, but I can't remember it. But I will be back with Tidal at July 30th in Huddersfield. Amazing response last time. I would love y'all to get back and see it again. That'll be July 30th. Other than that, not a lot more to say other than thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.